Oh my god, I've so been looking forward to this moment. Chiptunes is my entire childhood, and if I ever had any musical upbringing, it would be chiptunes. There are two people that comes to mind. I can't even breathe. I'm so excited about this. There are two people to me that really stands out and had a massive impact, and there are many more than these, but these two are specifically heroes of mine, which is Rob Hubbard and Martin Galway. They were both composers on the Commodore 64, and I'm sure a variety of other things later down the line, but they made some of the most magical soundtracks for video games that I've ever heard. And even to this day, I still think that they're thematic masterpieces and completely unrecognized compared to the global music scene. And yet they had an undercurrent in them. They brought something new to the game that has never been heard before and not even since, and really put music on a new trajectory. And there are so many throwbacks today, in today's music, back to the 8-bit, back to the 4-bit, and in certain cases back to the 1-bit synthesizers. We have a whole other ultra deep sampled vintage synthesizer coming out as well that is just 1-bit. But right now we're in the domain between 4 to 8-bit with the Commodore 64. The SID chip in the Commodore 64 was invented by Robert Yane. And supposedly the story goes that he was not interested in creating a normal digital sound chip, but he wanted to make a chip that was more musical. And I think in the initial proposal, it was like, it needs to do 32 voices. And that in the end got down to 3 voices, which is a part of the magic with the C64 as well, because the composers that were using it, Rob Hubbard, Martin Galway, had to limit themselves to a very, very few amount of voices. So they had to think super smart, kind of put a bass and a drum set on the same track, sometimes even chords. They would do super fast arpeggiations to mimic chords. That's only one voice, but played so fast that it sounds like a chord. Sometimes I think with restrictions also comes more musicality. Sometimes it's about limiting the features in the best possible way, and I think the C64 completely stands for that. But it's a super fascinating story behind the C64. Robert Yane, that designed the SID chip, later went on to co-found Ensoniq, and Ensoniq had an equally big impact on me in my early music upbringing. I worked for a year and a half to save money for the ASR-10, which was one of the first more modern sort of sampling keyboards, if you will. Prior to that, it was Mirage and Fairlight and some other ones. But the ASR-10 was sort of normal people like myself could afford it. I could only read about the Fairlight on vinyl covers, but this was the first thing I could ever touch, and also made by Ensoniq, dating back, which I only learned recently, all the way back to the beautiful C64. So it's hard for me to hide my enthusiasm for this machine. We are in the domain of ultra deep sampling, and I think we're looking at one of the most underrated machines in the history of synthesizers. In fact, I sort of took that thought a little bit to the extremes, in the sense that I wanted to get multiple SID chips so I could compare them, and ideally from different generations. There are a couple of different generations of SID chips made over the years. And I was lucky enough to get this bad boy here, a little bit heavy on the chunky side, from Electron. It's an amazing unit. This one contains the original SID chip in it, and it's really a a one-to-one. If I understand it correctly, they actually ended up taking some of them from the C64s when they're issuing this one. So we are back in time to the original chipsets. And it has a super cool sound. We often see amazing emulations and simulations out there that can do nearly the same thing as this one, and they're wonderful. But to me, sometimes when you go into the domain of vintage, things change a little bit. Sometimes individual chips will start developing personality and all that stuff, and that is near impossible to emulate in software because there's so many amount of chaotic factors. Why do each unit degrade in different ways? But that's one reason. Another one is that the units tend to be somewhat noisy. They're not like the cleanest of machines, and the bit resolution is very unique. It's like a sonic stamp, an imprint, if you will, that we've tried to emulate it, and we have a fairly good sort of way of dialing in bit compression in Soundpaint, but we couldn't reach anything that hit exactly that of a C64. It's just that magical, and it's deeply baked into the oscillators and the way the whole chipset operates. And if I understand it correctly, Robert Jans, forgive me for the name, was very musical in his design of the chip, and I absolutely think that shows in this unit here. It is so magical. So this was the old world. A little later on in the world of SID chips, the MOS came out from Sammich, and this one actually has 2 SID chips in it, and it's an awesome machine because it is based on the old SID architecture, but they've learned a few things. It's not as noisy, it's a little bit bigger sounding, it's just a super cool unit. And side by side, they offer you 3 different SID chips. There's 2 in this guy here, allowing for like stereo SID and stuff. And it's just the most awesome dynamic sonic super duo because they play together in the coolest way. And I've ultra deep sampled them myself to the deepest of perfection. You're looking at over, let me just see here how many samples actually, because that is a number I cannot remember on the top of my mind, is that many. It is over 36,000 samples, and that's the way you do it if you really want to get down and boogie in sampling. And I know that sounds like an insane number, and it probably is. But to me, when I work with machines like this, and I hope you're going to experience that in this library here, we're not just looking at some silly little sound chip with 3 voices that sat in an old computer from 1980, whatever. It is a different thing. And because of my deep nostalgic love for these old wonder machines, I also took them and ran them through a variety of analog hardware, old Roland tape decks, tone beasts, plasma distortion, whatever I could get my hands on that could super enhance the signal. I have 2 Moog pedals as well that I use to warm up the signals on some of these sort of cooler older vintage instruments that can help as well. So what you're about to hear is not going to sound like what you think a C64 should sound like, even though we have that in abundance as well in terms of dry, raw oscillators. And because it's so deep, we decided to also offer this library in a standard edition, so you can choose between the ultra deep sample version and the standard version. The ultra deep sample one is 59 gigabytes, so it's really for people like me that are connoisseurs of oscillators and old machines and really want to get close to it. Sometimes these machines tend to lose their lives, and for me, I want to do everything I can to preserve the memory, and I try to record them in a way so I don't have to connect them back again. That's another thing. I just want them right here because they're really clunky and difficult to use, but they're beautiful in other ways, perhaps unlike any modern technology today. But without further ado, let me take you into this beautiful machine here. We were so lucky to have some of my favorite performers play it, and you're going to see them improvise with it. This is the first time they tried it. I'll also play with it a little bit in the end of the video because I love it so much. So these are my last and parting words. Thank you so much, and thank you for supporting Soundpaint as well. It is such an honor to be able to nerd out at this level and be rewarded for it as well. So thank you.
slow response time. Just like to grow, it's really nice. All the drama.
That was so cute. Forgot to use the monitor.